All right, welcome back to BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. Drive safe, Dave, and we're lucky, honest to God, here, right, to have a guest like Dan here. Dan Ronan, a celebrity, right?
Exactly.
I mean, we're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Stop. Hey, and everybody that's out there, and they turn it to 146 on Sirius, you can hear right here on Road Dog, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get the news, get to hear what's going on. So tell us the beginning. Tell us the beginning of you getting into it.
I got into broadcasting in high school. I grew up in the Chicago area, and I, like a lot of people, I was trying to be an aspiring baseball player, but I'm a little on the small side, 5'7". I was never going to make it, so I figured, okay, if I can't make it as a baseball player, I'll become the play-by-play announcer for the Chicago Cubs. And
good luck with that, right?
Well, yeah, there happened to be this guy named Jack Brickhouse who did the job for half a century and is in the Hall of Fame. So anyway, I gravitated to news because I've always been a news guy. I've always been intrigued by current events and the like. And I got into radio in high school, and then worked in radio and television. And now I'm 61, and I've been doing this for 46 years, and I'm still plugging away.
So transport topics, SiriusXM, which came first?
Actually, I was doing corporate PR in Washington, D.C. I was the VP of a trade association. And Mark Willis, who many of you have heard, Mark and I have been friends since I was doing television here in Dallas back in the mid-2000s. Mark called me up and said, I'm taking a couple weeks of vacation. And I said, yeah, okay, that's nice. He said, no, I want you to sit in and do the show. I said, okay, well, fine. So I ended up filling in for him for a week or so. And about that time, I left the trade association I was at, and Transport Topics offered me a job as their associate editor. So the timing of it was just seamless. It just all worked out. So now I do print and online, and I do television for TT, and then radio for SiriusXM.
So many years in this industry, right? Covering it, whether it's news or on the radio. Have you ever seen a market? Have you ever seen a trucking market industry? What's going on, the chaos, everything, than what we have right now?
Well, it's a fascinating story because you've got so many different things taking place. I mean, and on top of that, we're still dealing with COVID. Yeah. We're still dealing with the problems of COVID. So you've got an industry that is going through some transitions in terms of the final mile, e-commerce, more regional type of operations. And then you've got things that are on the horizon, more electric or hydrogen-powered vehicles, the autonomous vehicles. You've got all of that's on the horizon as well. And so all of these changes are taking place. And oh, by the way, we, as an industry, carry 71% of the freight. Think of the mess we'd have been in had truck drivers not been doing their job the last 18 months. Think of the mess we'd have been in with grocery stores and restaurants and hospitals. I've got a son who is in the medical profession, a nurse in the Dallas area. Him and his wife are both trauma room, ICU nurses. Think of the mess we'd be in as an industry, the world, if we didn't have truck drivers delivering, supplies, gloves, masks, vaccines,
everything
to hospitals.
We'd be in
a tremendous mess.
And and thankfully, right, that our drivers, the heroes, and it's Truck Driver Appreciation Week. We tell you all the time how grateful we are for what you've done. But staying, keeping them hands clean right now is as critical as it was last year.
We have hand sanitizers right over. We're not wearing masks now for this interview, but right over there's hand sanitizer. 5 to 8 yards away from us.
Thank God that and naturally, Dave, we talk about that all the time. Is that how the drivers they have their own bubble, right? Because they're in their truck, and the big worry last year during the COVID approach was when they went home, the holidays.
Right.
That was for us
around their families.
As scary of a time as there was, because the drivers for the first time were gonna go home for Christmas, for Thanksgiving, and it was a worry. I mean, many of our drivers didn't go. They chose not to because they were scared to go. They were scared to infect maybe or get infected by some of their family. Their bubbles were so secure in what they'd done. It wasn't time for them to go home yet. And they stayed out and took care of this country.
Right.
Tighter bubble than the NBA players were in.
Absolutely, and not only that, when the people that they came into contact with, whether it be at the truck stop, they were in their own bubble too. So when they came next to another truck driver, these were two really tight bubbles. So you were talking about probably the best of both worlds when he come out there on the road, because whether you were in a line at a ship or a receiver at a truck stop, those people that you came into contact with were in solitude all day. I mean, and that's what they did, and I think that helped save the industry, help keep the industry alive and keep it moving. But we wouldn't be anywhere without it. I mean,
we'd be in a dire situation. And hats off to those men and women. And I love chatting with those folks when I do the show, or when I'm doing Mark Willis's or KC's show. I did KC's show a couple weeks ago, and I love chatting with them and hearing their day-to-day challenges and struggles.
No doubt about it. Hey, so let's you bring COVID up, and we haven't talked about this yet, Dave. So this is a good time for us. Let's talk about COVID and Biden's mandate now on the COVID shot, and we're here, or on the vaccine for people with 100 employees or greater. And so what we see and what we hear is that, the large trucking companies immediately raising their hand through the ATA or whatever, saying that's not fair. That puts the smaller trucking companies at a greater an advantage on hiring drivers in a tough market. What are your thoughts on this from Biden?
Well, I don't have any thoughts because I'm a reporter, but it's going to be an interesting, because I don't.
I like that.
I don't have any thoughts, but it's going to be an interesting argument. And I read the release that came out from ATA the other day. I read it.
Yeah, I saw that.
Saw it, and it's going to be an interesting argument. But I think the Biden administration is hanging their hat on the vaccine mandate on a Supreme Court ruling from 1905 that said vaccines can be made mandatory. That's what they're saying, is that there's a Supreme Court precedent.
There is a precedent.
1905 that says vaccines can be made mandatory, and that's where they think that they'll win on. Now, the question about the size, I don't know. I'm not a policymaker guy. I'm a reporter, but it's an interesting question, and I think that the larger fleets have made an interesting point.
And it really is, because let's face it, if you don't enforce the shot, right, that means you've got to do weekly testing to get a clean test back, and that's not going to happen. I mean, who's going to go in line to get that done every week?
Plus, the drivers are on the road. I mean,
where are they going to go?
Without a doubt.
Are they going to pull their tractor trailer up to the CVS or the Walgreens and wait in line? In the drive-thru. I mean, let's be practical about it. So I think there are some challenges, and there's a chance it'll be modified to some degree or another. I mean, these things usually are, and they figure out some workaround.
And they also are, the impact not only is globally, not just 100 workers, they're talking about all federal workers as well. And I do know that the military has already moved into that limelight. I think they have by till October 1st. I think they have until that date or something to that effect.
Well, if you're an officer or an enlisted person in the military, the day you cross that line and you accept and say, okay, I'm in, I think it's 12 or 13. As a matter of fact, I did a deployment to, this is 18 years ago. I deployed to Iraq and Kuwait with the 3rd Infantry out of North Carolina, and as an embed. And before I went to Iraq and Kuwait, I mean, I had shot after shot after shot after shot, and medical records, and
3rd Infantry Division, Rock of the Marne, blue and white stripe.
Yeah, that's. I was at a place called the Udari Range along the Iraq-Kuwait border, and before I went, even for the time I was shots. You got to be vaccinated.
Drive Safe Dave and I, we both grew up in the military kids. And I mean, it seemed like I was like a dog. I was getting shots all the time. It's just what we did.
Yeah, we were deployed overseas in Germany. We had not only did we have a military ID card, we also had a shot record that we had to keep up to date, and you had to have that. So it was something that was just done, and we never questioned it. We never said, hey, no, I don't think that's not legally okay. You just went and got your shot and you moved on.
Yeah, and that's. You're starting to see vaccination rates go up, and I think that's good because it's proven that these things work. I mean, I've got mine. I mean, I got my shots, and just I'm not going to tell you whether or not to get your shots, but I got mine, so I'm happy.
Got mine too. I got bullied into it, but I got it. But hey, let me say this: so it is Driver Appreciation Week. When you're doing the show, what do you hear from drivers that maybe they're not? I mean, do they still feel when COVID hit? Let me go here. When COVID hit, for a while, the drivers really did feel appreciated like they never had before. But now what we hear is that it's kind of gone back to the old way. There's not a lot of appreciation. What are you hearing?
I don't know if it's going back to the old way, but I think there is, like anything else, you make 2 steps forward and then you kind of creep back a little bit. I think drivers just want to be appreciated and to be respected for what they do and to have their job looked upon as an essential job, as essential as cops, firemen, EMTs, nurses, doctors. I think they'd like to be in that same group of people, and I think clearly they are in terms of
heroes. We're talking about heroes,
frontline folks. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
They do a job that's a challenging job. It's the type of job where, I've used the expression, and I'm sure you've heard it before. You take a shower at the end of your day rather than at the beginning of your day. You're out there driving. You're sweating it up. Yeah. Sometimes you're loading and unloading freight. Hopefully not, but in some cases you are. And it's tough work, and I think that they want to be appreciated and be respected for what they do, and they want to be paid and compensated for what they do.
Yeah, and one of the things we talk about today is the value of a driver. Back 15 years ago, the driver's value, unfortunately, in our industry was he or she that gets the miles is that best driver, and that's changed. Now we have safety records, we have the PSA, all of these things that talk to us about a driver, and what we're preaching now is that, hey, the true value of that driver is that CDL, is that safety record. That is what many trucking companies, and we've seen it in some of the displays here at McLeod's conference, is focusing on safety. How many accidents, what is as an independent contractor, how are you taking care of your truck, of your driving record, your speeding? Let me tell you something, these accidents, and I think the value has gone up for one reason. I think it's because of some of the litigation that we've seen on the insurance side.
Well, and there's lots of cases that are out there, high publicity cases involving, juries that have, call them what you want, runaway juries, whatever it is, that have, put down some big verdicts. So the thing that if you're a trucking company or an independent contractor, whatever it is, you got to keep your operation as clean as you can. You got to run it as tight as you can, because if there are flaws in your operation, at some point, the flaws, if you have an accident, if something, heaven forbid, happens, the plaintiff's attorneys will find that and will exploit it to the highest degree in a courtroom or settlement conference. They'll say, well, that you got to be concerned about that. So as an owner operator, as a fleet operator, whatever it is, you got to run as to the highest degree you can.
No, agree.
And I don't know anymore doesn't work. That just doesn't work. Nobody buys that anymore. No jury, nobody buys that anymore.
No, and what that ends up becoming is that I don't know ends up being used as a ball peen hammer inside your head in closing arguments or a settlement conference. You didn't know what you should have known, and guess what? Add another 0 to the settlement.
Amen. Yeah, we used to say back before electronic logs, back before we had all of this communication, ignorance is bliss. And you know what? It's not anymore. You can't be ignorant. Matter of fact, there's no reason to be ignorant. It's even, the fact that you have this data now, if you don't use it, and
then your question, why didn't you use the data? It was right there on your right there on your analytics. Why didn't you use it?
Yeah, we went back. We were able to find it. Why weren't you able to see it in real time? I mean, and that's what we're looking at here.
You didn't notice that this was going on in the truck or the driver.
Absolutely.
And with cameras as well. You didn't notice that your driver was becoming fatigued. You didn't notice that that he or she was their performance was degrading. Well, why didn't he? Well, no excuse.
Everybody, and I say everybody, most companies now, or a lot of companies now, have gone with the outward facing, the forward facing cameras. What are they? We're hearing still a lot of feedback that people just do not like that inward facing. What are you hearing on that?
Well, you hear that from drivers that they feel it's a privacy issue, but in many cases it can be used, if it's done right and not punitive. It can be used as a teaching tool.
Yes.
It can be done to train and to show, let's try driving this way. Let's do this. What are you? If you have a hard braking incident, what were you doing? And we can see how you were reacting during the hard braking incident because we've got a camera that's looking at you. Yeah. And maybe you got tired, maybe you got distracted, maybe something happened in the cab, and then all of a sudden, a kid on a bicycle came out in front of the tractor trailer, and you had to hit the brakes to do that. So, if it can be used as a teaching tool and not punitive, but used as a way to instruct and help, then I think we're moving in terms of that, and that's what you hear from drivers. It's just that they're concerned about this from a privacy standpoint. Now, the airline industry has, gone with audio recordings and the like in the cockpit, and they're very, very specific rules about how those can be used, and it's in union contracts with, the Airline Pilots Association. Wow. There's very specific rules about what can be used, how it can be used, under what circumstances, and in the case of, let's say, like the NTSB, you'll never hear an audio recording of a cockpit. You'll see a transcript, but you will never hear that recording because of privacy concerns. They just won't do it.
Huh.
You'll see a transcript. You might see a transcript of it in an accident report, but you won't see it. You won't hear the actual recordings.
They can utilize it in an investigation, but they can't actually publicize it. Is that correct?
No, and certain people will hear it. I mean, the investigators will hear it, and the board members. But it's not going to be something. It's not going to be like a 911. Channel XYZ. We have a 911 tape of the call involving this, and you have the 911 tape.
Yeah.
I was in television for a long time, and TV that's sort of become I won't go there. I won't go there. I'll just leave it on the table, guys.
Hey, listen, we got to let you go. We're going to another break, and we're going to come back at 11:45 with some more breaking news for you. Hey, this is BCB Live. We're the safest station in the nation. I want to thank you sincerely for coming out here and making time for the little guys right here.
No, you guys are in the same sphere. We're all in the same business. We're all working together. We all have our platforms, and we're all talking to many of the same people.
All right. Y'all be safe. BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. We'll see you in 15 minutes.
All right.